My number 2 is Lincoln, so here we can have the fun discussion. And I played that clip because I think it addressed some of the things that have been critical of this film, because I truly felt that, I mean, it was a passion project for Spielberg forever. We all knew that. But to try to take someone that is so larger than life, and like Spielberg said, to take a monument and to make him really a man, and I thought he was absolutely successful in doing so. I mean, I think we see a very real person on screen here. Daniel Day-Lewis, of course, we all knew he was going to tackle this job successfully, and he absolutely did. And I think by choosing what they did, to pick these last 4 months of Lincoln's life was an absolute success. They first were going to try to tackle a film that was, there's a picture of Spielberg reading the first script, which is like 550-some pages, that was going to tackle all of Lincoln's life. But I think this particular time period encapsulates everything about Abraham Lincoln and is such an important, what I love so much about this film is so much what it does to look at the political process, to really see, and to make it riveting at the same time, to actually see how they had to, how they had to cajole these, all these representatives to, vote a certain way, and how so many major things in history are done through, these backhanded dealings and all of that. But yet to see still such a leader of this stature, I'm not just putting it here because it's an important film, which I think it is. For me, it was an absolute enjoyment from start to finish just to see all of this tapestry that is put together. Because I like everybody else, probably thought Spielberg was going to, fall into kind of that Spielberg trap, which I know some of you think he did. Because of that very beginning scene when we see Lincoln and the 2 soldiers are there and they're reciting the Emancipation Proclamation, I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be the monument kind of thing. But from when we see him on the floor with his son in the White House, to the arguments that he had with Mary Todd Lincoln, the discussions, the script is so brilliant. There's a scene about 10 or 12 minutes long where it's just Lincoln and his cabinet in there talking about the whole idea of the Emancipation Proclamation, whether it was legal or not, and it is just riveting to listen to all of that and feel the history. I just felt like I was back in history with this, and it's just, to me, this is a masterful, masterful film. The only problem I had was how he handled the assassination at the end, but, I wish they had just left it out. But everything else about this film is a masterpiece for me. Okay, so argue away, gentlemen.
I feel like I already said what I wanted to say last week. I thought that, Daniel Day-Lewis's performance is incredible. There's probably the best ensemble of the year.
It's incredible.
Everyone's in this movie, and they all do great jobs. I argue that Sally Field isn't as great as the rest of them, but
that's what I thought the first time I saw it. But the second time I was okay with her performance.
When I was watching it reminded me a lot of 1776, the musical, just without the music. Because that's also a very riveting telling of, Congress and, politics and everything. And so so there was kind of an echo of that for me watching it. And it's Spielberg. He did a great job, and he always does a great job, but there wasn't anything in this that surprised me. Like when Munich came out in 2005, there was this raw energy that hadn't existed in the prior Spielberg film. He was still growing as a filmmaker. And I didn't see any growth with Lincoln. It was just Spielberg. It felt to me like the movie that he'd been wanting to do for a long time, and it just like, well, I guess let's better get this out of the way. And not that it feels like it was a rushed film, but I don't see what there was about it that made him feel driven to do it right now, where there was just something other than getting Daniel Day-Lewis.
Well, yeah, I see what you're saying about the growth of. I don't see it as growth either, but I think I think this is such an important story, and I think his biggest success is to tell that story in a absolutely riveting way and make it feel so authentic. There's an authenticity to this film that I just is very palpable to me. I mean, I don't know. That was, I mean, I know it's coupled with, I mean, I'm a huge fan of presidential history and all of that, so I know that's a big part of what makes me respond to presidential movies, because I think it's fascinating to look at the men who have been president, and really try to understand that job. And, and of course Lincoln, I mean, one of the more immortal, but not the most immortal presidents there ever was, and to be able just to see a portrait of that really kind of brings him back to the man that he was. I think that I didn't ask any more of that film.
Yeah, and I mean, Daniel Day-Lewis, he really beat the shit out of that animatronic robot at Disneyland. That thing really phoned it in compared to what Dan Day-Lewis.
He stood way above there.
And, it's almost like Steven Spielberg, you know what, if I can direct a horse, I can direct Daniel Day-Lewis. And that's what he needed to do to get ready for this one. No, I did enjoy Lincoln. I didn't have a problem. I talked about the end last week.
We talked about that a lot.
That is where it becomes the Spielberg trap of father-son, but it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And, the screenplay is written very well, and it's got a great structure to it. It doesn't come alive the way that Silver Linings Project's screenplay does, and I know that that's a tough race between the two of them, and I'm hoping that Russell gets it.
So now, Jamie, what was your biggest problem with Lincoln?
It's not a big deal. You love it, and I don't like it. My biggest problem with it was just that I was bored. And my favorite TV show was actually The West Wing, but that I don't want to see a 2-hour movie from Steven Spielberg that reminds me of an episode of The West Wing.
You really thought that?
The movie absolutely does not play to Steven Spielberg's strengths. It subverts every strength he has.
But that's what makes it brilliant. I mean, that's what makes it.
To subvert the filmmaker's strength is what makes it brilliant.
Yes, I mean. I think this is one of our, because we've argued about this before, because we've had this about Oliver Stone, we've had this about the Coen brothers on the show, but I think why always play to the director's strengths? I mean, I love when directors kind of do something different and, that's outside of what their norm. I mean, Spielberg is one of the greatest directors of action and suspense and all that, but why not just make it
outside his norm? He's still working with Janusz Kaminski. He's still got John Williams in there. He's doing a lot of Spielbergian approaches to it, but there's, nothing that. There's a difference between reaching outside of your comfort zone and, like you said, Garney, growing from that and bringing a new dimension to it. What Lincoln does is completely subvert his strengths. There are very few Spielbergian touches because all he's trying to do is keep up with the nonstop dialogue. There's no room for it.
But why are you always looking for that? I mean, why? I mean, do you think any other director would have done as good a job with this as Spielberg? I doubt it.
Oh, I don't know.
I mean,
I don't know. I mean, I have a problem with the script too. Even though I know it's going to win best screenplay without a doubt. And you must be
I don't know about that.
Yeah. Tony Kushner is more Jewish than David O. Russell, and Tony Kushner has never called Lily Tomlin a cunt.
Well, he's not getting Lily Tomlin's vote.
He's probably never even said that word. I know he's never had that
word. Oh, yes,
word.
he has. He wrote Angels in America.
Oh, that's right.
All kinds of words.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. All right, so that's where I have Lincoln. All right.
But it's also the sense of history is what I don't like about it.
Why don't you like the sense of history about it?
Because
do you feel history?
I think the opposite. I think it works over time to deify Lincoln. To make him a deity.
Yeah, I heard you make that argument. How can you see that in this movie? I don't see it as a.
There's a scene in Spike Lee's Four Little Girls when George Wallace, who is just about the most racist man you can imagine, stands with his black housekeeper and saying, "This is my best friend," and of course George Wallace at that point is near death. So it would be like doing a movie about George Wallace on that day and completely ignoring the fact that he set civil rights back like 50 years. Now,
I don't get that comparison.
I'm not saying Lincoln set civil rights back 50 years, but Lincoln Lincoln thought the blacks were inferior to whites. He didn't want them to fight the Civil War because he thought that they would be savages. They'd kill their own men, and I mean he came from a racist background. So yes, his thinking evolved and it matured.
Yeah.
That's an interesting arc, and I think that the movie's poor for not exploring that. But the movie knows it has that problem. So it puts in this completely disingenuous, embarrassing scene where he's talking to a maid, and he essentially says, "Well, I don't know you as a person." So
I thought that addressed the very issue that you were talking about. I mean, to me, that kind of showed that he did have this kind of disconnect. Because I love the question he asks, what do you think will happen after this? You know, and that's a really good question. I mean, that's what I loved about looking at the idea of change, you know, that it is always difficult to see what's going to happen when this immense change happens. And, I mean, like you said, you could have made a huge miniseries on Lincoln, but you're going to have to focus on...
I mean, you don't have to. I mean, there's a way to incorporate elements.
And that's what he did.
Who this man is and where he came from. And there's nothing about his thought. You know, there's nothing about blacks in the movie. I mean, Django was a much more honest movie about the slavery than Lincoln.
But it's not. It's called Lincoln. It's not about the you know.
It shouldn't even be called Lincoln.
Spielberg already
did. It should be called Team of Rivals, which is what the book is based on. Because Team of Rivals is actually what the movie is about. I mean, it's about the political.
But look at what the film is about.
All the people surrounding Lincoln trying to get this thing through and fighting back and forth and maneuvering. It should be called Team of Rivals. It's not about Lincoln. If it was about Lincoln, it would be about Lincoln.
It is about...
And my argument is it's not about Lincoln. And that's the problem I have.
But it is. I mean, it is about Lincoln.
If it was about Lincoln, then you know where he came from, how he reached the decision that
Jamie,
he wanted to pass.
How the hell would you make a good movie about Lincoln? How could anybody... I mean, talk about the most difficult subject to tackle. I mean, there's so much history there.
That's not my problem. I didn't choose to make the movie.
I know that, but I think what they chose to do, I think they were very successful by taking this one part, dropping us right into the middle of history, and just allowing us to experience it. And I think that's what Spielberg was trying to do. I don't think you can do all of that with this particular man. I think that's way overreaching. I think he would have been fallen on his ass if he tried to do all of that. So it's not specifically about slavery and all of that. It's about how the United States government came together to make this change. And I think on that level it is immensely successful.
Yeah, and I'm saying that all you need is a scene to tell where he came from is feelings about race. I mean, all you need
should have wrote
that
scene for him, Jamie.
But they knew that it was a loser, and they knew that their deity
How do you
Lincoln
know that, Jamie?
would falter.
Were you sitting there? Did they have those discussions
in front of you? I know that because they added the scene of the maid. That's how I know that. It's also not very cinematic. I mean, you get no sense of of the White House as an environment. So I don't think that's very impressive.
I think we saw different movies. I think you saw Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter and got confused.
Have you been waiting to say that all night?
I have. I've been waiting for that opportunity. That was my one joke that I was going to say all night, so I was just waiting. All right, so enough about Lincoln. I know we're never gonna agree on that.
I guarantee you, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter is actually about Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
You're probably right. I will give you that. There,
no,
yeah.
I saw it. It is.